Everything you have ever felt, every memory you hold, and every decision you will ever make is the result of 86 billion neurons firing in a 3-pound organ. Psychology is the scientific study of this process, the bridge between the biological hardware of the brain and the social software of human civilization. To understand the mind, we must first understand the machine. The human brain is organized like a 3-story building. The basement is the brainstem, which regulates the autonomic functions of survival: heart rate, breathing, and temperature. Above it sits the limbic system, the seat of emotion. Here, the amygdala acts as a constant alarm system, scanning for threats, while the hippocampus functions as a librarian, indexing memories for later retrieval. The top floor is the cerebral cortex, specifically the prefrontal cortex. This is where you reside. It handles logic, language, impulse control, and the ability to project ourselves into the future. Communication within this structure is both electrical and chemical. Neurotransmitters act as the brain's internal language. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation and reward. It is the drive that pushes us toward goals. Serotonin regulates mood and social hierarchy. GABA acts as the brain's inhibitory brakes, while glutamate is the excitatory gas. When these chemicals are in balance, the system functions smoothly. When they are not, the very fabric of our personality can shift. For most of human history, the mind was the province of philosophy. It wasn't until 1879 that Wilhelm Wundt established the first psychological laboratory, seeking to map the atoms of the mind. This sparked a century of intellectual warfare. Sigmund Freud introduced psychoanalysis, suggesting that we are driven by an unconscious mind, a dark reservoir of primal desires he called the id, balanced against the moralistic superego, with the conscious ego trapped in the middle. In reaction to Freud's lack of hard data, the behaviorists, led by John Watson and B.F. Skinner, argued that the mind was a black box that couldn't be measured. They focused solely on observable behavior. Through classical conditioning, they proved that physiological responses could be triggered by neutral stimuli, the way a bell could make a dog salivate. Through operant conditioning, they showed that any behavior followed by a reward would be repeated, while behavior followed by punishment would eventually vanish. By the 1960s, the cognitive revolution changed the lens again, viewing the mind not as a black box, but as a sophisticated computer. This school of thought focused on how we encode, store, and retrieve information. We learned that human memory is not a video recording. It is a reconstruction. Every time you recall a memory, you pull it from long-term storage into your working memory, rewrite the file, and save it again. In this process, details are lost, and false information is often integrated. Your past is a living document constantly being edited. However, the human computer is not purely logical. It is riddled with cognitive biases, evolutionary shortcuts that helped our ancestors survive, but lead us to irrationality today. We suffer from confirmation bias, where we only notice information that proves our existing beliefs. We fall victim to the availability heuristic, fearing spectacular but rare events like shark attacks, while ignoring common threats like heart disease, simply because the former are easier to imagine. We are influenced by the halo effect, where we subconsciously assume that someone who is physically attractive must also be intelligent and kind. These glitches extend into our social lives. Humans are fundamentally social animals, and the presence of others fundamentally alters our chemistry. The Asch experiment famously demonstrated the power of conformity, showing that a majority of people will knowingly state a falsehood just to avoid standing out from a group. The Milgram experiment revealed a darker truth, that ordinary people would deliver what they believed to be lethal electric shocks to a stranger, simply because an authority figure told them to. This suggests that our sense of morality is often secondary to our drive for social cohesion and hierarchy. Our individual differences are categorized through personality psychology. The modern gold standard is the Big Five model, which measures 5 traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits are remarkably stable over a lifetime and are roughly 50% heritable, meaning half of who you are was decided before you were born. When the friction between our biology, our thoughts, and our environment becomes too great, the system enters a state of disorder. Modern clinical psychology moves away from the stigma of madness and toward the biopsychosocial model. This views mental health as a complex interaction of genetic vulnerability, psychological patterns like rumination, and social factors like isolation or trauma. Today, the most effective treatment for many of these disorders is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It operates on a simple but profound principle. Your thoughts create your feelings create your actions, and your actions reinforce your thoughts. By consciously identifying and challenging maladaptive thought patterns, humans can physically rewire their own neural pathways, a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. In summary, psychology reveals that you are not a static observer of the world. You are a biological machine that is constantly hallucinating a reality based on incomplete data, ancient survival instincts, and social pressures. But by understanding these mechanisms, by mapping the biases, the history, and the chemistry, you gain the ability to intervene in the process. Psychology is the ultimate owner's manual for the human experience. It is the science of understanding the self, so that we may ultimately master the self.